Cool dog.
Back in August, amidst the actors' strike, it was announced that Sonic 3 and Paddington 3 would continue production without the actors. First of all, little fucking late, Paddington. They've been filming this movie since 2022 and it's not even coming out in the US until next year. Either get your shit together or stop hiding in that chateau of yours where you scarf down marmalade sandwiches, Paddington. Oh god! So what does this mean for our Blue Hedgehog movie? At the very least, it would give fans hope that the movie is going to be more Sonic oriented if they can film half the movie without any actors, which, you know, I would hope so. You know, I would hope that this Sonic the Hedgehog movie actually features the blue bastard in it. And don't get me wrong, the two movies do a good job at that, but we all know those freaks behind the scenes like to throw in their scrapped rom-com scripts from 2010. And I eat that shit up. Another thing to take away from this is that the crew would have more time to work on these scenes that only had these characters, which is something I think Sonic 3 could benefit from because Sonic 2 was pretty ugly. We all know the story by now. In 2019, Paramount put out a trailer for the upcoming Sonic movie, but they made Sonic's dick the wrong shade of blue, so they spent $5 million to fix the Sonic. And $5 million well spent. Sonic is now a lot more marketable, no shit, but for the time and budget they were given, Sonic is composited well into most of the shots. And for the most part, you can't really tell that they're trying to hide their ugly mistakes of the past. Except for this one scene where that is definitely not Sonic underneath that blanket. So speaking of VFX and compositing and shit, why don't we think back to the first trailer? Now, you'd have to be out of your fucking mind to think that this is a good design, but from a visual effects standpoint, it's not the worst thing ever. The CGI in this trailer sucks. A lot of debris isn't rendered in yet, which makes some of these action sequences look weak, and I still don't get why they thought this shit was a good idea. Also, because I'll never get another chance to mention this, for some reason in the US trailer, the background in this scene is blue, but in the international trailer, it's white. Like, is that how unfinished it was?
No, I don't give a fuck.
So, back on topic. In this trailer, in my humble opinion, I think Sonic was rendered pretty well for better or for worse. His model is lit well, and one of my favorite details is all the little spikes poking out of his fur. It's the little things that matter, and if you don't like that detail, you can kill yourself. It's my video. Another thing I've seen many point out in this trailer is how there's no two shots where Sonic looks like the same model. And I see that fully, but also people have gone out of their way to say that they had multiple models made for this trailer, and I just think that's bullshit. There was a comment from an animator on the movie who said, oh, they kept changing the model during production and it was a pain in the ass, but I don't think he's talking about the models in this trailer. I think he's just talking about like pre-production models and shit. For those that did not catch my last video, which, wink, wink, Blur Studios did a test for the movie in 2017 using this model as the basis. Very Alvin and the Chipmunks-esque. This model would carry into pre-viz and pre-production material before morphing into this thing once filming started. Once filming wrapped and it was time to promote the movie, they just kind of went all over the place. Like, it seems they were using the initial model as a basis, but God only knows what fucking model this could have been. So when the trailer does come out, the model we see is pretty much the one that they used when they were filming the movie, but refined for animation and marketability, or I guess lack thereof. So to recap, no, they did not have 18 models of Sonic for this one trailer. Oddly enough, I think it was the Chip and Dale movie that made me realize this, because there's scenes where he looks exactly like some shots in the trailer, but it would also make no sense for them to have multiple models of Sonic for this movie. A factor into why it's so impressive that Sonic looked the way he did, of course in terms of lighting, compositing,
Stop! I get it, okay?
is because this was the first trailer after all, and usually movie trailers aren't fully like complete and indicative of the final product. They really hammered that fact in after this trailer came out, which I fucking wonder why. But even when Sonic 2 was coming out, there's been this recurring theme where if something looks bad, the crew can just pull out their ass, oh, it's only for the trailer, which you'll see later. Also, one last thing I want to land on is every once in a while I'll see something like, oh, fuck the Snyder Cut, release the Sonic Cut. And then that'll then be followed up by some smartass being like,
I don't know if you know this, but the footage in the trailer is the only footage they finished of the old design.
technically there would be an old cut per se, but Sonic fans don't fucking know how movies work. Realistically, it wouldn't be finished for our viewing pleasure, but there does exist a storyboard cut, a previs cut, a post-viz cut. What? So yeah, release the shitty post-viz CGI cut. Here's a little bit of ADD. You think the original VFX direction was vaguely inspired by Phil?
Yo, fuck nuts. It's probing time.
Hear me out. Throughout production, they frequently mention how Ted was an inspiration for the VFX because of how well the VFX in that movie have aged, which, amen, brother. But Ted is like a teddy bear, and they're trying to make this grotesque alien Sonic thing. Ergo, if one CGI live-action hybrid R-rated film is on their boards, why not use another live-action hybrid R-rated comedy with a grotesque alien figure? Even if they don't explicitly mention it, we probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for Phil.
But you can do it anytime you want.
Anytime.
I don't know if you know this, but they actually redesigned Sonic and made more of these movies, just in case you did not know. After what felt like fucking forever, 6 months, the new trailer came out, and what do you know, they didn't botch it, and Sonic actually looks marketable. In the movie itself, Sonic's CGI quality is pretty good, but in the trailer, ew, was 6 months not enough? Don't get me wrong, it's not horrendous, but like, half of these scenes aren't even in the damn movie. This one's gonna be a deep cut, but I remember ahead of the trailer's release, someone on Twitter randomly claimed that they were scrambling to get the trailer together, casually describing a scene of Sonic running across the Great Wall of China, where they accidentally rendered a black ball over his face and had to paint it over in the final cut. Although, I remember checking that person's account to see if they were a viable source and only being met with weirdo furry diaper content, so I don't think that they're a viable source. But you know, with such a prestigious achievement in film, surely the development process of the redesign had to take weeks, hell, maybe even months.
2 days.
It is to my understanding that the first draft of the redesign was conceived within around 2 days. Tyson Hess talked about this more on an episode of the GHZ podcast, but literally the day after the trailer came out, Aaron Webber called him over to watch the first cut of the Sonic movie in a dark room, which is a pretty disturbing mental image.
Stop it, please, I beg you!
Afterwards, Tyson Hess would go home and sketch out a rough idea of what Sonic should look like. At this point in time, a delay was not announced, so Tyson's original draft was more realistic to what the animators might be able to pull off within such a short time frame. Specifically minor changes to the model, like making his eyes bigger or giving him gloves, which leads me to believe that this sketch he posted on Twitter was actually his original draft, just without gloves. After presenting this original sketch, Tyson would be told to go further, leading to what we got, to which the announcement of the redesign would officially be made. Now, I know this is going to shock a lot of people, but modeling process does not occur overnight, which is seemingly why we have this thing. Anyway, I still talk about this ad nauseum on Twitter, but it will always be scary to me that their old model for Baby Sonic was just similar enough to the redesign that they could slap on some gloves and call it a day. It's actually hilarious because you can see exactly when the model changes because suddenly his ears and nose change, amidst other slight differences. It is to my understanding that the whole opening sequence was done by Marza because they did a breakdown of the sequence on a CG World issue, but if they're responsible for this one sequence, then why the fuck does Baby Sonic's model change so suddenly? I think a factor into why Sonic blends in with the environment so well is due to the movie's color grading, which is consistently using warm and cool tones for the indoor and outdoor scenes. I guess this isn't really an astute observation, but this is an orange-ass movie. Going back to how unfinished the trailers were, none of the trailer footage had this color grading, and they really just did fuck all for the TV spots. Like, what in the actual fuck is this? Something else I only now notice is that in a lot of scenes where Sonic is talking, they deliberately hide his teeth, which, I really wonder why they might have done that. But it's like my only grievance with this character animation. It just makes him look like a puppet. Also, one last thing I want to land on, but for all the stupid people in the audience, no, this redesign did not single-handedly shut down NPC Vancouver. Sure, reanimating an entire movie with an additional $5 million is a daunting task, but it was only their Vancouver branch, not the entire company. In fact, NPC would continue to work on Sonic 2. Speaking of Sonic 2, something I always find fun about movie sequels is how the first movie's box office performance is going to improve what we see in future installments. Sonic 1 already had some decent VFX shots, but considering it did numbers at the box office, it'll be great to see the VFX crew reach their full potential without the redesigned handicap. The possibilities are truly limitless this time, and animation is cinema. When the Sonic 2 trailer premiered at the Game Awards, my first impression was, wow, this looks good. Because honestly, it did look pretty good, but by God was this trailer unfinished. So many of these shots would be redone in the movie, and this shot in particular had many wondering if they redid Sonic's model for the movie, which they did. Tyson Hess has danced around this subject on Twitter, but for Sonic 2 and onward, Sonic has a new rig. Movie-wise, this shows how much Sonic has grown since the last movie, which I guess also included making him 6 feet tall. But production-wise, this was because they weren't restricted to 6 months to whip up Sonic's model, therefore had more time to make some revisions and truly perfect his rig. That's not to say the old model was some shitty IK rig though. Like, have you seen what a movie-quality model rig looks like? Jesus Christ. All in all, nothing too shabby in this trailer, it's just that Sonic's model can be a little ew. Something that also caught the attention of many is that the color grading in this trailer is not the greatest. Looking back, it's not abhorrent, but it just makes some shots look like a Geico commercial. I believe Tyson Hess had to come out and clarify that, once again, this was only for the trailers, and shortly after the trailer's release, Paramount would post a more saturated version to Twitter. Surely this is the correct color grading, and what we saw in that trailer was an unfinished product, right?
Did you steal that from
Wait, that's actually what it looks like? The fuck is this shit? Yeah, the final color grading is still not good. It is to my understanding that color correction is in the hands of a movie's editor, which, let's see here. Yo, this motherfucker edited Kangaroo Jack? Anyway, I have no idea if the dog shit color grading throughout this movie is at the fault of the editor or the DP. But the cinematographer for Sonic 2 has now changed from Sonic 1. Either the old guy was just unavailable or Jeff Fowler just really liked the cinematography in these Seth Rogen comedies. Now, look, the cinematography in those movies are great, and I believe his work in The Interview is phenomenal, but Sonic 2 is just kinda eh. Sonic 1 is lit and shot like a theatrical rom-com from 2012, and while Sonic 2 has some great shots here and there, it is lit like dog shit. Half the time, I can't even tell if these were shot on location or if they're just pickup shots simply composited into the scene. The outdoor lighting in the Siberia scene is especially egregious because the scenery was completely CGI. Somehow, for these few shots in a CGI environment, they completely fuck up the lighting on Tails, a CGI character. This has to be a byproduct of COVID, so God forgive me if I'm yelling at the work of some underpaid VFX artist working from their shitty apartment. But it seems over the course of the pandemic, MPC has picked up this really dope habit of just putting a drop shadow under most composite shots and calling it a day. Like, this is some Woody Woodpecker-ass compositing. Come on, man. Come on. Anyway, I imagine the majority of the people watching this actually want me to talk about what Sonic's face looks like instead of boring shit like whether or not his lighting is good or bad. Sonic's model is not horrendous. During action scenes, pretty good. In pretty much any other scene, also pretty good. In the first movie, I feel like his ability to emote was held back by their insistence on making Sonic cute and marketable, which I definitely understand. Here, Sonic is able to convey a wider range of emotions without feeling like they're trying to make him overly adorable as an apology for the old design. Just whatever you do, don't pause during any of these scenes. Good God, man, those wrinkles. For the longest time, I just assumed the wrinkles were caused by a shitty fur groom on the new models, but apparently this is a deliberate choice by the VFX crew to make them feel more realistic. Like, guys, do you not remember what happened last time we tried to make Sonic 2 realistic? In recent years, I've seen people complain about the butt brow in Sonic's game renders, so I can only imagine the movie's VFX supervisors saw those complaints and went, fuck you, nutsack brow. I would assume any grievances I have with the character models are solely on NPC, as they exclusively handled the character animation in the movie. Marza was still attached to the movie, but I'm unsure what sequences they might have done, besides, of course, the drone home short. This movie would also have some new VFX companies on board, such as Double Negative, who did some of the CGI environments, and Fat Belly VFX, who handled some of Robotnik's effects. For more information, look up Fat Belly Sonic on Google Images. You'll be in for a pretty interesting read. With the Knuckles show out and Sonic 3 on the horizon, you have to wonder what we're going to expect in terms of VFX quality for these future installments. In my opinion, the CGI in the Knuckles show was fantastic, especially for a TV show. Sonic makes an appearance for one episode, and although some of his facial expressions look like Knuckles shaved his eyebrows off in his sleep, the rest of his character animation makes up for it. Besides, I feel like the only reason Sonic looks the way he does is because the team wanted to put more of a focus on Knuckles in the show called Knuckles. Seriously, there is not a single shot of Knuckles in this show that looks bad. And if you don't agree, you can kill yourself. It's my video. My only real gripe with Sonic otherwise is how inconsistent his shade of blue is throughout this series. In Sonic 1, he's got a consistently cool hue in his fur. coal. In Sonic 2, he's just whatever shade of blue the colorist was feeling that day. In Knuckles, he tends to be this very saturated, vibrant shade of blue, which I don't really mind because I want Sonic to be blue, but just pick a good shade of blue and stick with that. It doesn't seem like NPC had any involvement in the show and won't be attached to Sonic 3 either, which is a little sad to see considering we wouldn't be here without them, but you know, I'd rather Knuckles look like he's actually there instead of them just comping him into the scene and adding a shitty drop shadow. Because this is a TV show, they hired way more VFX houses to work on the show as to quicken the production pipeline, including but not limited to Outpost VFX and ILM. Yes, that ILM. They've also mentioned that the majority of the crew will continue to work on Sonic 3, which I think is great. Knuckles already had some consistently amazing VFX shots for what it was, so I imagine on a movie budget, Sonic 3 is definitely in the right hands. Will Sonic himself continue to be ugly? Well, this time he isn't relegated to a side character, so probably not. When I started working on this video, the Knuckles series nor the trailer itself had even been out yet, which led to some concern on how the visual effects could have looked based on the fact that it's a TV show and Sonic 2 didn't look very good. But now that it's out and we know this quality will continue into Sonic 3, I think I can safely conclude that the VFX quality won't be completely butchered this time around. I hope you learned something today, and I'll be seeing you all next time when I become the next Star Fox. Laters!